Hey Boondockers, where are you staying tonight? I'm Jeremy Storton. I'm an advanced Cicerone, host of the Good Beer Matters podcast, and an occasional traveler. I'll be your host as we search for a great place to stay and a happier life on the road. This is the Roads and Stays audio magazine, the best 30 minutes you'll spend all day. Did you know that Roads and Stays is also a magazine? We cover RV news, personal stories, and keep you in the know on tips, discounts, and future events. So, what are you waiting for? Download Roads and Stays today. Well, welcome everyone to episode 1 of the Roads and Stays audio magazine, and welcome to Harvey the Alpaca's News Corner. This is where we share the latest RV news, blogs, videos, and events. So subscribe to our newsletter and get updates like this straight to your inbox. In our lead story today, we're going to visit with Joel Holland, the CEO of Hosts, and visit with Anna Maste, who is a co-founder of Boondockers Welcome. We're going to talk to both of them about the story of the merge between Hosts and Boondockers Welcome, where we are today, and where we think we're going in the future with the whole RVing lifestyle. But before we go there, we're going to talk about a really short story called Choosing the RV Life for Your Family Might Pay Off. If you remember, even before the outbreak of COVID-19, there was a huge movement toward full-timing in an RV. Remember, the whole van life thing got real popular as well. Since the outbreak and the boom of remote workers, there's been a record number of people choosing the digital nomad life while RVing, of all ages. Furthermore, the pandemic has made a lot of families rethink their school options too. Well, in 2019, before it was cool, the Garcia family moved their family of 5 out of their stick-built home and into a home on wheels. In the following article, they talk about their experience of moving out of their Joshua, Texas home and into a 44-foot RV. The adjustment to homeschooling, transitioning jobs, and being on the road isn't for everyone, but this family is glad they did it. In fact, parent Jaron told Good Morning America, "We've hacked the freedom code for us." So, is this lifestyle for you? Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates like this straight to your inbox. Calling all aspiring boondockers. The Boondocking 101 live event has ended, but you can still access all the replays. Go to boondocking.heysummit.com/replays to get all of our best boondocking how-tos, expert Q&As, tips, tricks, and more. Today, we get to introduce the world to something that most of you have already heard of before, but it's RVing and boondocking and finding a great place to stay. But we have a little bit of story for you. And like any good story, I think we need to start at the beginning, or at least as far back to the beginning as we can go. And Joel, I'm talking about you specifically. Joel, will you please introduce yourself and tell us what you are doing now?
Yeah, hi there, Jeremy. Nice to be on. I'm Joel Holland. I'm the CEO of Hosts and Boondockers Welcome. And I mean, really now I'm just enjoying life because I'm running a business that I love, in an industry that I love, based around a hobby that I love. So I guess you could say I'm living the high life, but it wasn't always this way. Before I got into the RV lifestyle and before running this business, I lived a much different life in a city, kind of more of the traditional 9-to-5 grind, and ultimately burned out on that lifestyle, longed for freedom of the open road, found that in RVing, and then longed for purpose again, and found that in Hosts, which I purchased about 4 years ago. And it's been an amazing marriage of freedom, the lifestyle that I've always wanted, and a business that's fantastic.
Well, and I've known a lot of people who have given up their successful, high pressure, high dollar career to go do something they love. It's either starting a winery or brewery or going to Alaska to capture wild bears. And you chose a different option. You decided to get into an RV and just go. And I'm really interested is why you did that. What you just kind of mentioned a little bit about your life before RVing, but what was that moment that made you think, I can't take another day of this. I need to get in the car and go?
Yeah, it's funny. Rarely is there that moment, but I got pretty close to having that moment. I used to commute, basically a 20-minute commute, but every day it was an hour because of traffic, to an office. And it was, a great office full of great people, but I hated that drive so much. And every single day was just as bad as the day prior. It was like Groundhog's Day. Like I just hated sitting in the traffic. And there was a day where I was approaching the exit for the office, and I knew that if I stayed on the highway, I would just continue on to the Blue Ridge Mountains a couple hours later, in Virginia. And I was like, you know what? I can't get off this exit. I can't do it. And I just kept driving, and it felt great. I just basically took a sick day, and I just kept driving, and all of a sudden I felt free. Right? I was back on my schedule. I got to see, amazing sights and sounds, that Virginia offers. And that was kind of the great awakening for me of like, I can't do this, sit in traffic, go to an office, sit there for, 8 to 10 hours a day and then go home and do it on the backside as well. It's like traffic both ways. That was the turning point for me.
So then the question is here you are getting frustrated with the driving, and then you ended up, chapter 2 is you spent a lot of time driving.
Oh, that's
right?
a really good point.
So chapter 1 of your story is, breaking free of the shackles. But chapter 2 ends up with you and your wife in an RV. How did that occur?
Totally. So that also happened very impulsively. So same highway, Route 66 in Virginia. We had a wedding. A good friend of mine was getting married in Manassas, Virginia. And so we went out to this wedding, and the day after the wedding, in kind of a, perfectly like happy hungover stupor, we looked at each other and we're like, hey, do you know there's an RV dealership literally down the road? I'm like, I've always wanted to go look at RVs. Like, let's just do it. And so we drove over, started walking through these units, and it was like meant to be. We walked into this fifth wheel and fell in love. And I was like, this is crazy. There's a kitchen. It's got a couch. It's got a little fake fireplace. You walk up some stairs to a bedroom, and you can take this anywhere you want. This can't be real. And we really impulsively, pretty much on the spot, purchased the fifth wheel, then immediately found a truck later, purchased that to then pull it. And that kicked off the journey of eventually RVing through all the lower 48 states over the next 2 years.
Well, and it's funny. It's a well-known fact that all good decisions are made after a night drinking at a wedding.
Totally.
And so yours turned out to be one of those really good decisions made the day after. Typical story, right?
Yeah, zero buy. I will say, I don't think I ever had a moment of buyer's regret. It was one of those rare decisions where it felt right at the time, and it felt even better when I went to pick it up, and then I just couldn't wait to use it. Like I think one of the most least patient times my whole life was waiting to take the RV on the first trip. Like I just sat at home counting down the hours. I just couldn't wait.
And I've also experienced situations like that too, where it's almost like the crust of life just kind of builds up to the point where you don't even notice the weight anymore. And as soon as you have that moment when the weight is shed, then you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how bad it was getting, and now I feel so free. Is that a similar experience that you had waiting for that RV?
Yeah. Wow. That's actually really well. You put it well. Because I knew that I was pretty burned out on the life that I was living at the time. And by the way, it was a great life for a long time. I got to a point where and my wife and I were both we just didn't want to be in a city anymore. We really love nature, and we were ready for a change. But I didn't know until we actually started RVing how stuck we were actually feeling. And it's to your point, I can distinctly remember the first campground we ever went to. First of all, it was off season because we bought the RV in January. So we went to this campsite that was barely operating. I don't think they had water running. They didn't have much electricity. There was no leaves on the trees. Nobody else was in the park. Like we were those crazy people that were camping in Virginia in winter. And I remember it being the most beautiful, spectacular, like everything seemed perfect. The air smelled amazing, the crunch of the leaves. I just all of a sudden felt really present. And I think that was the weight coming off and feeling for the first time like, whew, we're free, right? So in any other situation, winter in Virginia in the mountains would feel dreary, but instead it felt like we were on cloud nine.
Hey, business owners, are you interested in earning extra revenue? Harvest Hosts is a platform that connects over 200,000 RVers to local businesses for overnight stays. The model is simple. Hosts open up a space for RVers to park for one night, and in turn, travelers spend money at the business. And there's no cost to be a host. In fact, hosts make an average of $15,000 in extra revenue every year and meet some amazing folks. Visit harvesthost.com/hosts to get started today. You know, there's a game I play with my kids because my kids are teenagers, so I have to play games with them to get them to talk to me now, right? And so one of the games I play with them is to ask about their day, and I'm going to turn this around. The same question for you I call it the high-low game. So for as soon as you hit the road and you started living the RV life, what was the high point, your favorite moment, or the low point, the biggest challenge that you had to endure?
Sure. Well, I mean, I could probably put both of those into the first trip. So on the drive, so we bought the RV in Northern Virginia. And then we drove for the first trip down to Wytheville, Virginia, which is like Southwest Virginia, like near Blacksburg. And I remember that drive down the highway. I mean, I was just feeling euphoric, right? Like, again, all of a sudden, like I'd driven that drive many times, and I never cared. And this time I'm looking at I'm looking at the trees and I'm looking at the rolling hills and mountains, like with a new perspective. Like I was like, this is amazing, right? Because I was in that headspace. So that was the high. Driving to the campground, absolute high. The first low, which really was no big deal, but it was comical. I didn't know what I was doing. And so we pull in, it is a 50 amp unit. Well, they only had a 30 amp pedestal at the campground. So I didn't have an adapter. I didn't know you needed adapters. I couldn't plug in the unit for electricity. So we had no heat and it was winter. So that first night we were freezing in the RV, like freezing. Now, of course, when I got there, I disconnected the truck from the fifth wheel and got it all set up because I was all excited to do that. But the batteries died overnight. So in the morning, I had no battery power to put it back on the truck. So that was a whole ordeal. I didn't know how to use a fifth wheel hitch, so I couldn't actually physically get it back into the fifth wheel, even once I went to Walmart and purchased the adapter and plugged it in. So it was just a comical, string of things, but it was still so much fun, right? Like it was like really, like once I was out of the system. By the way, you learn really quickly in RVing. Right? Like it's a really fast learning curve. You only sleep one night in the winter without heat once. You never do that again. You figure it out.
Yep. But I've had similar experiences to that too. I call those my cuddling nights.
Yeah, perfect.
So we can, we take a negative and turn it to a positive, and hey, now we're keeping
some
each
of the
other
best
warm.
spooning we've ever done was that night. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're continuing on your travels in RV, and then along comes Harvest Hosts. Tell us about what that experience of you discovering what that is and deciding to get involved.
So, shortly after this Virginia trip, I was still working, but starting to do more weekend trips, but really like longing to just get out and go without a destination or B, a time when we had to stop. Because I hated like weekend trips. I was always so sad by the end knowing it was over. So once we
Sundays
finally,
are the worst on weekend trips.
Oh, the worst, like the worst. And I just wanted to keep driving. So finally, I stepped down for my position at the company where I was working. And my wife was a veterinarian in DC. So she had kind of finished up a good career at where she was working. We both had the ability. We had no kids yet. We're like, let's do this. Like, let's just do this. Like, let's just go RV until we get bored with it. And I loved it because we had no timeline. We thought maybe a couple months and we'd be like, all right, that was cool. Let's go back to normal life. and we hit the road. And what was amazing was we ended up loving it more and more the longer we went, with one exception. So during the day, we'd be driving, and I always say, wind in the hair, freedom of the open road, and it's true. Like we felt like we were choosing where we wanted to go, when we wanted to go. Just the freedom of having complete control over our schedule was so liberating. The only thing that became a bummer after a while were that campgrounds, some of them are fine, some of them are pretty good, a lot of them suck. And and there's a mixture, right? And so you get better at finding, the right one for you. But the reality is I had all these, what I thought maybe were delusions of grandeur for camping out in the, on a winery or in the woods or on a farm on the top of a hill, looking out over pastures, right? And what actually happens is you pull in and you're parked 5 feet away from somebody else on your left and your right. And it's a very, it provides a really useful resource for you to plug in, rest, recharge, and then go again. But I was looking for more of that, like, where's the beauty in the camping, And so that's where we discovered Harvest Hosts. We started asking people at campgrounds, what else is out there? Like, do you do this all the time? And they said, no, we boondock sometimes. And I'm like, cool. What's that mean? What's boondocking, right? Like, so you learn what boondocking is. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like these rigs are built to be taken off road and not plugged in for a while. Where do you boondock? So I started learning about, BLM land and national forest parks. And along those conversations, someone said, well, we are members of Harvest Hosts. We like to stay at wineries. I was like, wait a minute, like pause, rewind the tape. Let's play that again. You can stay at wineries? And I'm like, where? They're like, oh, they're all over the place. There's like 600 of these things in the country. I'm like, no way. And you can go in and like drink delicious wine and then go sleep right there. They're like, yep, that's exactly the program. So as soon as I heard that, I looked this thing up, joined, we became members, and took our first trip, shortly thereafter to a Harvest Host location. And it was just exactly like it was described. It was boondocking in beautiful settings with incredible experiences. And it was exactly that. It was what I'd put in my mind, so many times. Turns out it existed.
And I've spent quite a bit of time camping at RV resorts or state campgrounds. I love it. But, invariably, I always end up next to the trailer full of screaming kids or barking dogs or something like that. But when I think about that camping experience that we all talk about, and when I look at that magazine in my head, I never see a state campground. I mean, sure, there's plenty that are beautiful, and the ones I've gone to are beautiful, but I don't imagine that setting in the RV magazine in my head. I imagine being out in the middle of nowhere, a bunch of grapevines or hop vines, and next to a winery and brewery, and that's what I see in the RV magazine in my head. And what you're describing, what Harvest Host is accomplishing, is creating that kind of dream scenario. Is that fair?
No, it's 100% correct. And it's funny, I'm smiling because a week ago, and I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but I stayed at the most incredible Boondockers Welcome location that I've ever stayed at. And it was here in Colorado, 75-acre farm. And we parked right in the middle. And if you can remember Windows 95, remember the screens, the screensaver, the rolling green hills and blue sky that just was insane? That was this with our RV in the middle. It was the most incredible thing. And like that, when you talk about the magazine, that's the magazine I always had in my head, was we're parked on a vista looking out in every direction, and it's quiet and there's nobody there. And all of a sudden this exists now because of Boondockers Welcome and Harvest Hosts.
Well, and that was a perfect segue. Let's talk about Boondockers Welcome. But first, I want to introduce our other guest, Anna. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Anna, I'm going to just ask you a simple question. I'm going to let you run away with this. Anna, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Anna Maste, and I am one of the original co-founders of Boondockers Welcome, which we sold to Joel, and it is now part of the Harvest Host family just about a year ago. So I founded the company back in 2012, so about 10 years ago. And my co-founder was my mother, who is still an active RVer herself, and is in fact not on the road with her RV, but traveling right now. So that's why I am here partly in her stead.
Well, before we get back to that story, I want to head down just a quick rabbit hole because Joel, you brought up this term. Anna, you just brought it up again. It's in the name, but I just want to be clear because I realized I had been doing this for years before I knew what it was called. What exactly is boondocking?
Anna, you take it away. You built the company.
You
built the concept.
Yeah. So, I mean, boondocking existed before Boondockers Welcome did, but essentially it means camping without hookups. So some people might call it dry camping or wally docking, people who, boondock in Walmart parking lots. But like Joel was saying, right, every RV essentially is built to be able to be off grid for some amount of time. You've got batteries, you've got freshwater tanks, you've got gray water and black water tanks. You've got the ability to be off grid for some amount of time. And that's what boondocking is taking advantage of all those amenities that your RV comes with and using it to get preferably into the boondocks, which means, away from the tightly packed campgrounds into nature and wilderness.
So boondocking is the key to getting into that magazine worthy spot with your RV.
It certainly, yes, it certainly is. And I mean, there are some Boondockers Welcome hosts that you might find now who will actually provide you with hookups so you can have the best of both worlds. But that was really the original way that it started, was the expectation that you could find a lovely host who would let you boondock on their property.
So now that we're clear on what boondocking is, will you tell us about the origin story of Boondockers Welcome? How did that all begin?
Yeah, so my mom, Marianne, started RVing back in, I think it was about 2000. I was pretty fresh out of university at the time, and she put all her stuff in storage. I had to take all my mementos from the old house and store them with me. And she and my stepdad hit the road for a full year-long travels. And then after that, they fell in love with it and started going sort of, every other year. They would go for about a 6-month long road trip. And during that time, she started creating guides about where to find the free camping, those BLM lands that Joel was talking about. And so she built up a bit of an online reputation with what she called her frugal shunpiker guides to RV camping, finding free camping. And then back in 2012, actually a little earlier than that, about 2010, she approached me with the idea for Boondockers Welcome, which we had, my cousin was a big couch surfer. So she's like, I want to do something like that, but like driveway surfing. And I have a background as a computer engineer and was on my maternity leave with my eldest son at that point. So we used that time for her to spend with her grandson while I started developing the website that became Boondockers Welcome. And in 2012, we launched to the world, and we had about 200 hosts who signed up as from my mom's sort of travel guide email list that she had. So we were able to seed it with that group. And it just sort of grew slowly but steadily from there.
So with Boondockers Welcome, I'm kind of curious, what was the goal? Was it just to expand places where RVers could stay? Was it to find really incredible experiences? Was it a little bit of both? What was the goal?
It was definitely both. The majority of the free camping that my mom had done during her travels prior to starting Boondockers Welcome were in the southwestern United States, right? You've got Utah and New Mexico, sort of lots of places that have a lot more free open land. We, however, are from southern Ontario in Canada, which is actually quite densely populated, and there is zero free camping to be had here. If you wanted to go on if you wanted to go out on a trip, you're pretty much relegated to provincial parks and private campgrounds, which are very hard to find a spot in. We camp in a provincial park with some friends every summer, and you have to literally be on the website 5 months in advance to book your spot. So the idea of going out on a spur of the moment trip through southern Ontario was impossible. And Marianne knew that was a gap for sure, and not just here, but throughout, especially the eastern seaboard of the United States, which is also so highly populated, that there was people who would love to see all of those sites. And there was no way to stay without having to, plan ahead weeks or months in advance to book campsites. And then, like Joel was saying, you never know what you're going to get. You show up and you're just parked bumper to bumper with a bunch of other giant buses. And that was the impetus.
And as Joel was describing earlier about just having that sense of freedom, of breaking free of the life he was living at the time, I would imagine that would have really stunted your freedom growth by having to make reservations and plan ahead. And would you agree, Joel, that to be able to just go at wherever the wind blew you was the key to that experience?
I mean, for me, that was paramount, right? Like to me, like the term freedom of the open road means you wake up and decide what you want to do that day. I don't like in everyday life, you have to do a lot of planning, right? In work, you have a lot of planning. For the family, you have a lot of planning, right? Typically trips require a lot of planning. Well, that's all that's not the fun part. I mean, maybe some people like that, but I like waking up and feeling like I'm in charge of what I want to do today. If I'm on vacation, it's like today's vacation. And if I'm in an RV, like I'm going to do whatever it feels right today. If you're at a place you like, you stay. If you don't like it, you move on. And that's become increasingly difficult these days, as Anna was mentioning. It's wonderful that so many more people are RVing. The flip side is it's much more challenging to be spontaneous with using campgrounds and state parks or provincial parks. You have to do quite a lot of planning.
Yeah, and I think planning is a nice way to feel secure so that you can feel the freedom of the open road so long as it's a Wednesday.
That's right.
There's a certain amount of we just need to trust in the process and know that we're in an RV. I mean, there's always going to be a place to stay no matter what. But to really find those magazine-worthy places, that's where we need to kind of focus on. But now there's questions for both of you. Tell me about kind of like the collaboration, the merging of Boondockers Welcome and Harvest Hosts.
Well, I can kick it off by saying I had been following what Marianne and Anna had built for years because it's a fantastic product. And so I'd known about them pretty much as soon as I learned about Harvest Hosts, right? Like I got into that community, you start hearing about Boondockers Welcome because there's a lot of overlap. Yeah. They're very different, but they're very similar. And it's a lot of the same types of, it's unique experiences, right? It's people that want unique overnight experiences. And so loved the business. I'd been in touch actually with Anna, kind of multiple times over the years, just to remind her how much I loved the business and just to kind of plant the seed of, hey, if ever you think, you want to, sell the business and do something different, I would love to have, the chance to make an offer because, I genuinely love it. And I would love to keep building upon what you've built. So that's how I came across it. Anna probably had some background with the former owners of Harvest Hosts as well, because they were very similar worlds.
Yeah, we definitely did. My mom met Don and Kim, who were the former owners, and we were in touch with them while they were running it. And we had reciprocal sort of coupon arrangements with them for years. And like you said, lots of crossover between the Boondockers Welcome membership and Harvest Host membership. And yeah, when Joel took over, he reached out and we continued that relationship. And then it was during the pandemic when sort of RVing, you might have thought it was at its peak, but I think the peak is continuing to go up, that Joel really sort of expressed interest in buying Boondockers Welcome. And we had talked about it a couple of times before, but we were still really enjoying running the company. But my mom she turned 70 earlier this year. So this was it was her time to retire and move on. And it was time for me to explore some new experiences as well. So it worked out really well, and we couldn't have imagined selling it to anybody else. The dynamic and the synergies between the two groups was just, it was too perfect for us to pass up that opportunity.
Well, and I'm hoping that both you and your mom can actually spend more time in an RV and less time talking about RV travel. So what's going to happen now? Now that Harvest Hosts and Boondockers Welcome are together, they're united. What's the plan moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, there's two sides to it. And it was the same thing that I told Don and Kim when I purchased Harvest Hosts. We want to build the program, and that means not just bringing on more members, but bringing on more hosts. Because what makes Boondockers Welcome special is that you've got like over 3,000 incredible locations all over North America, and they're run by wonderful people, right? So it's that community that makes the program. Without that community, it has nothing. And so that was the first thing we've been clear about as a team. Always support the community first, right? Membership will follow. Members are always going to love the experience of staying where I stayed last week in Colorado. Like that's a no-brainer. Yeah. We got to make sure the hosts want to be in this program, and we need to make sure it's appealing to them. And so we spent a lot of time working on the technology behind the scenes to put the two programs together, to integrate the booking system. To Anna's credit, they had built a great booking system, and that was a relatively new concept for us at Harvest Hosts. And so we kind of brought them up to parity, put them together, and we now have this wonderful, fully integrated system. And the goal going forward is we want to add thousands of new Boondockers Welcome locations and Harvest Host locations, and then members will follow. But we're never going to sell out, right? The idea here is always to have a really strong and healthy two-sided platform.
So I'm going to ask you both to speak to this and speak specifically to the hosts. I would imagine if I owned a brewery or a winery and someone came and said, "Hey, would you ever allow people in their RV to come stay here?" My mind might instantly turn to Christmas Vacation and Cousin Eddie pulling up in his RV. So there's a little bit of trepidation there, right? What would you say to those people who are curious or interested in becoming a host and allay their fears of Cousin Eddie showing up?
Yeah, well, I think, Anna, you've probably got, because I actually, this is the part I wonder, you and then on our side, Don and Kim did the hard part of starting the network from nothing, right? I had the easy job of coming into a great concept and simply scaling it. It was already proven that it worked. I'd love to know how you convinced those first, couple hundred Boondockers Welcome hosts to potentially host Cousin Eddie.
So, I mean, part of the reason that my mom, Marianne, decided that this was a great idea was because she knew that this was something RVers already did, right? They would meet each other at a campground or, even just on the road, and, you share one beer around a campfire and all of a sudden you've got a new best friend, and they would exchange cards with their home addresses on it saying, "Hey, if you're ever in my neck of the woods, come park in my driveway, right? And I'll show you the sights." It was something that was already happening in the RV community, but never sort of with this scale. Or there were even, if you were an Airstream owner, the Airstream might publish a guide somewhere online or sort of somewhere in print where you could, put your name in and say, "If you're an Airstreamer, you can come stay in my driveway." But it wasn't sort of open to the entire RVing community like we did, and it wasn't online. So that was, it was easy to sort of take that and realize, yeah, this is something that is already being done and people want it. And the hosts themselves, they are guests too, right? Most of them are RVers themselves. So they knew that if they were willing to host people, that the other hosts would be similar, like-minded people who would be just as welcoming. And yeah, maybe once in a while you get a Cousin Eddie or a bad apple, but we worked things into the system to make sure that they had short-lived membership.
So for those people who are already in the program, they get it. They've done it. But for those people who have yet to buy an RV, who have yet to make that commitment, who have yet to hit the open road, maybe, Joel, maybe they're sitting in their car right now in traffic, just, trying to bide their time about how much longer they can take this existence that they're living now, he or she. What would you say to them about becoming or joining the Harvest Hosts and going on these adventures?
Yeah, I'd say it's just like the first time you bought a cell phone. You didn't know how much you needed that cell phone until you had it, right? And a week after buying the cell phone, you're like, how in the world did I live without this cell phone? All of a sudden, it gives me the freedom to communicate with anybody, anywhere, at any time. That's exactly the same thing with Boondockers Welcome and Harvest Hosts and RVing in general, in my opinion. Once you've done it, you're hooked. And I think most people are in that category or in that camp. And there's a lot of reasons. One, like Anna mentioned, the community of RVers is just overall a fantastic group of people, super friendly, always willing to help, wanting to talk. You can literally sit around a fire and exchange travel stories. It's amazing. So the community is incredible. There's endless places to see, right? Like North America is such a giant, giant place. And I've been trying my hardest to see all of it, and I'll never see it all, right? It's just never going to happen. And then there's that freedom element. I mean, if you're looking for the feeling of unbridled freedom, I find it hard to imagine there's much that gives you more freedom than not only being in a vehicle where you can drive it anywhere you want, but then being able to climb into the back of the vehicle to sleep. I mean, you just got it all right there. And that's why they call it self-contained. You're self-contained. You can go anywhere you want, anytime. And the only other thing I'd say that for people on the fence, the term boondocking is it's a technical term. I think that gives some people a little hesitation. They think it sounds complicated. I'm trying to rebrand that beauty parking, because the reality is it's easier than using a campground. You don't have to plug anything in. You don't have to hook anything up. Literally pull in, go to sleep. It can't be any easier, right? And then you go to the campground the next day just like you were going to anyway. So boondocking, don't put it on a pedestal. That was a mistake my wife and I made, and I think a lot of first-time RVers make. They think it's going to be really hard, and they don't do it for a while. So it took us a year before we boondocked. And then as soon as you rip the Band-Aid off, we're like, oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, is that all?
Oh, is that it? Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember doing that. We kind of following into that, I kind of want to ask about, a lot of people are traveling again. People can travel by boat. They can travel by car. They can travel by train and planes and automobiles. And there's my second movie reference for this podcast. But I remember after college going on a road trip from Southern California all the way out to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and then going through North Dakota all the way back. And I remember, you guys, seeing purple mountains one morning for the first time. I remember seeing golden waves of grain and all the stuff. I realized, oh my gosh, these aren't just lyrics to a song. These are actually out there. And now I can say I can check that off my life's to-do list that I've actually witnessed that. And I'm getting chills just talking about it now. These are things that I would not see on a train. I wouldn't see in a plane. There's plenty of beauty in a boat, but you're not going to see this on a boat. But my question for you guys is, what makes traveling in an RV such an incredible and valuable experience?
Well, Anna might have a better answer. I think the way I'd summarize it best is you can say, hey, pull over, right? Like if you're on an airplane or a boat or a train, you're kind of beholden to their schedule, right? And you're going to see some really nice stuff passing really quickly. But I can't tell you a number of times we've been driving, seen something incredible, and either I or my wife said, hey, pull over real quick. Pull over, sit there, pull out the camera, maybe pull out lunch, and just take it in. I mean, you get to just savor the moments because you can stop time. And you can't do that with other modes of transportation where you're not in control.
I don't think I could say it better than that.
That was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add to that, though, Anna, from your own experience?
I mean, I'll be honest to say that I haven't done nearly as much RVing as Joel has. I was the technical side of Boondockers Welcome, and Mom was really the RV side. So I don't have as much experience to add to it.
So now moving forward, what is the goal? What is the mission of Harvest Hosts now that Boondockers Welcome is part of the fold?
Yeah, it's funny. We are a mission-driven company, and we're very explicit about our mission and our cultural values. And we're a fully remote company, by the way, 52 employees, 22 different states. So it's very important as a remote company to be very, very explicit about like, what are you as a company? What are you trying to accomplish? So that people who join us are very clear on that. So our mission changed slightly when we purchased Boondockers Welcome. it is now our goal is to help millions of people live happier lives through road travel while supporting wonderful small businesses and communities along the way. And communities was the addition of Boondockers Welcome. So before it was to support wonderful small businesses, which we still continue to do. Now it's small businesses and communities. And that's what I really love about this program is every stakeholder involved with us, I hope, comes out better because of it, right? Like the road travelers, I genuinely believe we're making them live happier lives because road travel, you feel great. I think it makes people happy. I think travel makes people happy. Road travel is a fantastic subset. And then there are all these small businesses, right? Like we currently have over 3,000 small businesses in our program, but there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands that could be in the program. And we're working really hard to try to get them into the program because they benefit greatly from our members spending as they visit, right? And our members this year will spend over $40 million directly with the small businesses in the Harvest Host side of the program. And it ends up being about $13,000 on average for these small businesses. We don't take any of that revenue. We never charge the hosts anything to be in the program. It's valuable, right? It's valuable. Increasingly so in these weird times we live in. The pandemic knocked some businesses down. Our members help pick them back up. Today there's interesting costs and shortages and this and that, but our members keep showing up and supporting. And then on the community side, you go through these incredible towns. So, I keep mentioning this place I stayed last week. It was in Fairplay, Colorado. Also where South Park is kind of conceptualized. And it's not a place that you would naturally really go unless you're going to hike 14ers or you're going to visit a great Boondockers Welcome location. And so I went into this town, and then while I was there, I shopped, right? I did some shopping, supported the local economy, and had an incredible experience at this property. So it really the program helps the communities and the businesses and of course the members. And then we sit in the middle very happy, as a business that is profiting, of course, but also very mission driven and happy that we're making so many stakeholders happy.
So another question I have, given this, now that we have all these people that are doing this, and hopefully we'll get more that are going to go live happier lives on the road, what does the future look like? And Anna, I'm going to start with you. You're very tech savvy, obviously, but if you were to look into your crystal ball or your screen, what does RV travel look like in years to come?
I hope that, we get more fuel efficient RVs, or you can tow your trailer with your Tesla eventually, and your battery life means that you're not having to stop every 2 hours to recharge. That's my hope and dream for sort of the future of technology of RVing, and that it becomes that we continue to grow a network where people can go and enjoy nature without necessarily having to be in those shoebox sized lots in private campgrounds.
Awesome. Joel, how about you? What does the future look like?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think, especially these days, there's always weird things in flux, right? Today, gas is very expensive. We're seeing inflation, questions on the economy. These things always change, but we're trying to build a network that has locations everywhere, both Boondockers Welcome and Harvest Hosts, so that you can, and this is a slogan we use internally, stay local or adventure far. And I think backyard travel, I am convinced there's something awesome and exciting and unique to go see and do within 50 miles of no matter where you live in this country, or in the country above us or the country below us, right? There are awesome things everywhere. And so we're trying to make sure we have locations within 50 miles of anywhere. And by the way, I think we actually do already. So now we want more locations. But we have this network of over 7,000 locations now between Harvest Hosts and Boondockers Welcome. We are marching as quickly as possible to get that up to 40,000 because I believe that will support over 1 million members. And these are the things we're trying to do, is get our membership up and get our host locations up so that more people can kind of experience this wonderful lifestyle.
And it seems to me, and I'm gonna full on project right now, but it seems to me there's always a gas crisis, there's always a political crisis, there's always environmental crisis, and they're always changing, but they're always present. but there are times when we just need a breath of fresh air. We just need to grab our family, go away, and recharge our batteries before we go back to wherever it is we're going back to. It seems to me that every time I've camped at a big camping RV facility, I don't feel as rested. But when I'm somewhere a little bit more natural, then I'm ready to go back. I feel better about it. And this is the beauty and why I want to get involved with all this stuff, is when I understood what Harvest Host was trying to convey and offer. And that was exactly the remedy to many of our ailments, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, very well said. Very well said.
Yeah, well, thank you. So last things before we sign off, what are your words of wisdom for any guests or any hosts as we move forward?
I'll go first, and I just want to speak to the amazing Boondockers Welcome hosts. I mean, it's easy for, maybe not easy, but, a Harvest Host winery or farm, there's a business case for them to become members. Whereas Boondockers Welcome hosts, they're not getting any financial compensation whatsoever. Almost all of them do it out of a love for the RV community. And when we started Boondockers Welcome, we thought that it would be pretty much a give and take. You host for a bit and then you travel for a bit, and so that you're sort of on both sides of the marketplace the whole time. But it turns out that there are tons of people who can't RV anymore, or they loved it, but due to health reasons or just financial reasons, they can't do it anymore. And so they are really the lifeblood of the Boondockers Welcome host network. A lot of people who are still RVing, but lots of people who, are taking years or months off. And the social aspect of that community is really what keeps them there. And, Boondockers Welcome guests aren't expected to be, the life of the party every time they show up somewhere, but it really is just such an amazing experience on both sides. And I would just love for everybody to get that opportunity. Even if you only spend 5 or 10 minutes with each guest who pulls into your driveway, meeting those people and having them come through your driveway and having the world come to you, it's kind of the second best thing to getting out on the road and seeing the world from inside your RV.
Yeah. Joel, how about you? Any words of wisdom for any guests or hosts out there?
You got to try it, right? That's like, I think that really is, I'd summarize that for everybody, because if you're and we'll start with the hosts, because they're always, I think they're the lifeblood of the program. So if you have a piece of property and you want to try sharing it, right? In Boondockers Welcome, you don't need anything to sell. You just need a nice place for people to stay overnight. By the way, some of, a lot of Boondockers locations are in urban areas, in towns. Some are way out in the middle of nowhere, farms. They're all different. As long as you're willing to have someone come and spend the night and have that community element. And I'll say this, RVers are a wonderful breed. In general, they're really happy and they've got tons of stories. And so the Boondockers Welcome hosts that I visited, my favorite part, I usually take a 6-pack of beer, Vail Brewing Company, support local. And, and I'll say, hey, I don't know if you're looking, for a conversation tonight, but if you'd like to, let's sit outside and chat and just exchange stories. And that's a really fun social currency. You take a story, you leave a story, and it's really fun. And then on the business side, if you're running a small business, a winery, brewery, golf course, distillery, farm, attraction, museum, right? If you have a place for someone to park overnight, you got to try it, because there are on either side, no contracts, no obligations. It's completely free as a host in both programs. You're not signing a contract saying you're going to do this for any amount of time. If you like it, keep doing it. If you don't like it, just stop. And it works well. And then, as a testament to the program, most of our hosts have been with us a very long time because they really enjoy the program. So there's no downside to trying it. And then as a member, as an RV, if you own an RV and you're not yet a member of Harvest Hosts or Boondockers Welcome, please, as soon as you finish this podcast, give it a try. And we have a 3-month money back, guarantee. There's literally no reason not to go create a subscription. It's very inexpensive, under $100. That gets you unlimited access to stay at all these great places. And if for whatever reason it doesn't resonate with you, just ask for your money back and we're happy to give it. And then the final group of people I talk to are those who aren't yet RVing, but are intrigued by this lifestyle. It's easier now than ever to dip your toe, right? When I started, and my wife and I started, our first, couple experiences were renting these box trucks that were converted into RVs and hadn't been cleaned in 17 years, and things were falling off and they smelled bad and they rattled down the road, and we still loved it. But today you can go to Outdoorsy or RV Share and rent a Sprinter van, a beautiful Mercedes Sprinter van, or a Class A, or a trailer, like whatever your heart desires. It exists on these peer-to-peer marketplaces. Rent one, try it out. I think you'll love it. So there's something for everybody, but the main thing is you got to try it.
Absolutely. And back in my day story is before I ever did the whole RV thing, I had a VW multi-van Vanagon, and that was to this day the greatest vehicle I ever had. If I won $1 bazillion and it could have any car that I want, forget the Ferrari, forget the whatever, I want another one of those, because I have so many great memories and stories from driving that van to and from climbing spots and camping out in the middle of nowhere on New Year's Eve. And it was just, it's breathtaking and life affirming at the same time. So,
and empowering, right? Like, don't you feel so empowered knowing that you have everything you need in that little tiny traveling house on wheels to go and do the climb and then be self-contained? Yep. It's just amazing. Yep.
If anything goes sideways, don't worry about it. I got it.
That's right. And there's probably even a television there if you get bored.
Luckily we didn't do the televisions, but that's a different day. But thank you so much for coming on to this and sharing the stories. Thank you for the work you've done, creating this opportunity, creating this lifestyle, creating just these experiences. And me, with the work that I do in the beer field, it's all about the experiences, but ultimately it's all about bringing people together and sharing these experiences, whether it's through an RV or a great beer or a glass of wine. It's about bringing these people together for these great experiences. So thank you for putting this together and sharing your stories about it.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was a lot of fun. And thank you, Anna, for building such a great company. It's been a pleasure to kind of take over and then, bring it to more of the Harvest Host community. It's been awesome.
I couldn't have picked somebody better to do it than you, Joel. Thanks so much for having us.
Whether you're an RV weekend warrior or travel full-time, fixes and updates are always on the chore list. That's why Harvest Host has compiled this helpful RV renovation guide, complete with DIY tips, maintenance tricks, and everything in between. Download our free guide linked in the episode description to finally get your to-do list done.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Scott Shemtov, Director of Marketing at EmpireCovers.com. Whether it's rain, snow, sun, even critters, we're all about protecting your RV because we know that at Empire, RVs are memory machines, memory builders. So I wanted to share a few tips now that we're coming up to the winter season, whether you're in the north of the country where you might get a lot of snow and storms, or whether you're still in sunshine states like Arizona, Florida. There's still things that you should be doing to your RV to protect it. The first tip I like to talk about is maintaining your tires of your RV. First, you want to park on flat ground when you're done for the season. You want to make sure everything's flat. You want to kind of distribute the weight evenly across the tires. So if you're storing things inside your RV, kind of want to place them around differently so that the weight is kind of distributed as much as possible. You also want to inflate your tires to the recommended PSI of your manufacturer. And you also want to check back in maybe once a month just to check the PSI, reinflate your tires if need be again. And also, you can also protect your tires themselves with covers. You can get covers at EmpireCovers.com for your tires, and it helps keep them protected. The next tip I have is draining your plumbing. So first thing you want to do is you want to empty your black and gray tanks, and you kind of want to do them in that order. You want to get the real messy stuff out first, then kind of wash it through with the gray. You also want to turn off your water heater before you drain it. You want your water heater to cool down before you start draining it. So once that's cooled down, you're going to want to remove the plug and drain it. And also, you're going to want to open all faucets, hot and cold faucets, let them drain out as well. As a preventative measure, you can also add antifreeze into your water. The next tip I have is you don't want to host unwanted guests. And what I mean by that is critters, mice, pests, things like of that nature. So first things first, you're going to want to remove all food from your RV. You're going to want to empty out the fridge, the freezer, cupboards. You're going to want to clean the counters, clean the floors, make sure there's no dust or crumbs of any kind that attract the critters. Next thing you want to do is you want to close any gaps in walls, and you want to check the undercarriage of the RV. If there's any gaping holes, you want to close them up. You can either use silicone, you can use spray foam, you can use mesh, whatever you got laying around. And then if you have a power cable on your RV, you're going to want to disconnect that and then close up the cable hatch, because critters can crawl through there, crawl up your power line and then right into your RV through the cable hatch. The next tip I have for everyone is to cover up your RV. So before you apply a cover, you're going to want to clean the outside of your RV. And that's very important because you don't want any dirt that might be on the outside of your RV kind of getting rubbed up with the cover against, and that could cause micro abrasions against your paint. So you want to clean it nice and good. And then the cover itself does wonders. It helps protect against rain, snow, and harmful UV rays. You know, if you're out in the Sunshine State, even if you're in the northern areas, UV rays are still formidable. And what that really does is helps protect the seams and all the sealants on the roof from causing delamination. You don't want water getting into those gaps. So it really helps with delamination, preventing it. Also keeps out harmful UV rays, like I mentioned earlier. And that's great to keep the paint finish on your RV looking as good as new for as long as possible. Last tip I had for everyone is if you're not already a member, become a member of Harvest Hosts. It's a wonderful website and community. They have tons of information, a lot more tips you can go onto their website and find. Thank you for your time, and I hope those tips were very helpful.
Hi, this is Leanne Schultz from Alexandria, Virginia. Some of my husband's and my favorite stories of our RV adventures are ones that we had when we were brand new, newbie RVers. We bought our Airstream travel trailer in July of 2020 and couldn't wait to get out on the open road after being inside of our four walls for so long. It was also really hot in the Washington, D.C. area that summer, and we planned our first big trip to Maine to escape the heat. We had also just signed up for Harvest Host and we were really looking forward to having our first overnight stay. We knew the trip to Maine was going to take more than a day, and so we planned an overnight stay at a Harvest Host in Connecticut at an apple orchard. My husband took on the role of driver, and I was the designated navigator. I felt super confident in this role because I'd survived Washington, D.C. traffic for over 13 years. I also had a favorite travel app that I use called Waze. It provides the most efficient route and up-to-the-minute traffic and hazard information. As we got closer to New York City, we realized a tactical error. There was a really big difference between regular vehicle navigation and RV navigation. The route had us going through some pretty tight squeezes, including low-hanging bridges and tunnels. The best thing that I could do at that point was to help my husband move into the center lane to provide the maximum clearance and provide a calm and quiet environment. It was some super tight squeezes and some really white-knuckle moments. Looking back, it reminded us of the children's song, Going on a Bear Hunt, where you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you can't go around it, you've got to go through it. And that's just what we did. Now, as savvy, more experienced RVers, we know the difference between navigating for vehicular traffic and navigating for an RV adventure. We hope that you are using the appropriate RV navigation tool and you learned a little something from this story. Thank you for listening to the Roads and Stays audio magazine, brought to you by Harvest Hosts.
Thanks for telling that great story, and thank you for listening to episode 1 of our pilot series of the Roads and Stays audio magazine. Make sure you tune in to episode 2 where we talk about more news, events, and stories, as well as a lead story with Mark Acton from iHeart RVing, more tips, and yes, more stories from the road. Thank you for joining us for the Roads and Stays audio magazine, the best 30 minutes you can spend on the road.